It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And welcome to the official Superhero Slate review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
As opposed to those bootleg, unofficial reviews.
That's right, to hell with them.
You remember how to burn CD, kids? You know, people are selling our bootleg reviews out there.
They're getting them on LimeWire. They're downloading the show on LimeWire. Don't do that. Our show's free. We keep it free for you, commercial free even. I'm still reeling over the link that Chris just sent me before we started talking. Does it feel like technology that would be in Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, he's getting these glasses in the mail tomorrow that have like little screens behind them. I'll describe them as somebody who's just seeing them for the first time. So just imagine a normal pair of like sunglasses, kind of like Ray-Ban adjacent in size. But as you kind of like look through the slightly transparent sunglass, there is like another screen. There's like another almost tinier pair of glasses behind them that Chris tells me is a screen that you can plug into. Yeah. So I don't know what the ultimate plan here is, but I would like our next film review to be done inside of those glasses. Okay. You know, you just go ahead, which will be hilarious because you'll have to get like a cam, you know, of like Spider-Verse or Flash or whatever, and then you'll have to pump it into these glasses. And maybe the cam version will be less obtrusive because these are like weird transparent screens anyway. What a weird future we live in now, where you can watch cams of the next big movie through your sunglasses.
Yeah, I'll do it while I'm mowing the lawn too. That way I can like double down because you're not really looking while you're mowing the lawn. You're just kind of...
See, that's how you extract the true critical lens of film is you have to be distracted while mowing the lawn.
That's right.
That's how you really get to the heart of it.
If my crisp lawn lines are messed up because I'm watching the movie, that's a good movie, Mike. That's how we're gonna rate it going on.
Now I'm trying to think, are there like any iconic Guardians characters that have like sunglasses? Like weirdly enough, like Peter Quill seems like the character that would have sunglasses. Yeah.
But he doesn't because he does the AirPod, I guess the headphones, earbuds in this one. He's upgraded right from his Zoom.
I didn't even know that. Obviously, as we're starting to talk about the movie right now, we're going to keep it spoiler free until we sound the alarm and dive into everything. But it did make me go searching on Sideshow collectibles this weekend, just because you know I'm back in kind of like the Marvel vibe and feel again.
That's right.
And they sell a Sideshow collectible. I think it's like on sale or something. So I don't know if it's just been around for a while, trying to clear stock. But it's the Stan Lee from Thor Ragnarok. So he has like the scissor kind of thing coming out of his arm. And I was like, oh, that'd be like a really cool Sideshow collectible. Because it's like it's doing dual things. Like it's got like the nerdy like kind of thing from a movie, but also you just get a figure of like Stan Lee, which is probably harder to come by.
So speaking unrelated to this, because we don't get Stan Lee cameos anymore, folks, it's very very sad. But there is a Hulkbuster, a huge Hot Show, not Hot Toys, Sideshow. It might be Hot Toys. I don't know. A listener, Jason, is going to tell me about this because he has it. It's a Hulkbuster. And it can either fit an Iron Man, their Iron Man model inside of it, or a Stan Lee can go inside of it as well. It's built to actually support Stan Lee in the Hulkbuster.
That's cool. And that Hulkbuster is crazy because when I was scrolling through the catalog, it has like DLC. If you could attribute that to like a figure, like you can buy like an additional arm to go onto the Hulkbuster.
It's the one that grabs the Hulk's hands and locks into it.
And like the arm was like just in itself was like $240. So like, oh my god, the whole Hulkbuster thing must be crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. It lights up too. But yeah, anyway, sorry, we're in Guardians. We're in Guardians.
Yes.
We're not Hulkbuster.
No, I was just saying it's nice to be kind of like back in the Marvel vibe, right? Because I think this movie was exciting because it's like kind of a culmination of everything that James Gunn has been working on within Marvel, because he's officially ported over to DC now, right? Yep. He's in charge of everything. He's half of the Feige over there. So he's not going to be dipping back into Marvel for a long time now.
Yeah.
You can't say never, but he's contractually obligated to a whole
Right.
other studio for a whole other new set of responsibilities. So it did feel like we were kind of closing a chapter here. And also, like, the thread of Guardians, like, weaves through all of the, like, kind of like the best moments in the MCU. Like, I had to go on YouTube because I didn't have time to go back and really rewatch any of these Guardians movies, and I watched a video that just kind of surmised all of the Guardian stuff, which included like the Infinity War stuff and a little bit of Thor: Love and Thunder as well. So it was nice just watching it all just kind of like edited together, and I was just like, oh yeah, the Guardians, they've been there like the whole time, it feels like.
Yeah. And you know, this is technically, I think this is, we never reviewed the first movie, right? That the show started the January after Guardians came out, ironically. But of a lot of Marvel trilogies, you know, Guardians is one of the three that had the same director, right? We had Spider-Man, Ant-Man, and this, right? Is that correct? So it's a rare, I wouldn't say it's becoming more common, but it's a rarity these days to have movies, a trilogy of movies, in charge by one person the whole way through. And what's great about Guardians is he also wrote the movies, right? He co-wrote the first one, but I think he solely wrote 2 and 3 with himself. So I think that's really cool to have this director, his voice and vision at the same time come to the forefront of this movie trilogy.
And like, I guess you could argue that maybe Mario kind of kicked off the summer movie season, if you could say that. It's hard to say something in April kicking off the summer movie season, right? But this kind of really feels like things are kicking up and going. We were just talking about what the next film is that we're going to be reviewing, and then all of a sudden we're like, wait, there's one after that, there's one after that, there's one
literally
after that.
like the next like 10 weeks are full of movies. That's right.
Yeah, so I think the month of June we have like double podcasts every weekend, so that'll be pretty fun. So yeah, everything's just kind of like kicking off, you know. You know, depending on whatever medical organization you follow or keep track of, it seems like the pandemic at least is wrapping up in some aspect, you know. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx anything for the whole planet, but it does feel like we're kind of coming back to like a place of safety, you know.
Yeah, you know, the safety, but I will still say, you know, the estimates for Guardians 3 were lower than Guardians 2. But at the same time, the movie going experience is different. It takes a lot more to get people into the theaters now than it did in like what 2017, 2018 when the other one came out, right? So like you got to think like people aren't just going and running to the movies. I would not say, you know, we're not in like a financial crisis in the United States, but we are in a recession and people are not, you know, they're spending more money on experiences rather than, you know, things like movies or local stuff. So we're in an interesting spot where a lot of, you know, again, people in the box office are like, well, it takes a lot more to get people in, but that's because the entertainment industry is different now. So I can't compare when 1 and 2 came out to 3, but, you know, we can just jump right into the box office. It did actually beat estimates and come in at $282 million, Mike. Opening weekend, which is the 50th highest opening movie ever in the history of movies. So that sounds pretty good, I think, right? To be in the top 50 of opening movies ever. Like, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, there's superhero fatigue, you know, people didn't love Ant-Man, Quantumania. I'm like, yeah, but Guardians isn't Ant-Man. Guardians is I would say a tried and true team, a tried and true movie franchise in and of itself inside another franchise, Marvel. And a lot of people, you know, resonate with, you know, whether it's Star-Lord or Drax or Mantis, Gamora, Nebula, Rocket, Groot, whoever. Everyone's got a favorite character on the team, right? No matter what. So I think this movie has really teed itself up to bring in some money. But I will say, as Mike just mentioned, the legs part is going to be the interesting part, right? Because there are a lot of movies coming very quickly at the end of this month.
I do know back home, my brother is taking my mom to see Guardians on Mother's Day. So you got that kind of cross-audience synergy out there with a little holiday coming up. That's your warning right there. Here in the States, I think we're 2 weeks away from Mother's Day.
I thought it was next week.
Oh, God. Okay. No, it's coming up faster. Back down the hatches, everybody. Get ready.
Yeah. May 14th. It is 1 week from today, sir. So be prepared. for that.
I'm glad I brought it up.
Yes. Yeah. So
but also I think one thing that, you know, I feel like Guardians was never really going to be breaking records necessarily, because I don't think there was a big, unique kind of selling proposition for this film besides the fact that this was kind of wrapping things up, right? I thought the trailers were really, really intense, really emotional, you know, and obviously we were going to go see this movie, but, you know, they weren't really like introducing like, you know, a Jonathan Majors Kang in this film. There wasn't like a tease for like a Galactus that was, you know, overarching inside of the trailers or anything like that. This was just kind of like an emotional wrap up, right? And I would say maybe even the emotion of it could have turned people off on opening weekend, right? Of like, hey, I'm not really to go and get in there and ready to cry right away, right? Maybe I'll wait for the dust to settle.
I disagree from the people I saw who saw this movie with me the second time. Like, there were the loudest sobbing and bawling I've ever heard in a movie theater, Mike, happened during Guardians 3. So
yeah, well, I think we should probably go ahead and jump into our review for the movie so we can get into the spoiler cast and talk about the parts of the movie that made us cry.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, I think so. And you want to go first? You want me to go first? I'll let you pick here.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll jump in. I would say this is a very effective and fun movie at the same time for wrapping up what we have here for the Guardians. It was very emotionally charged, and I would say it felt extremely cathartic at the very end of the movie, right? You know, I wouldn't necessarily say that I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, but kind of once we got into that kind of last part of the movie where things really started going and everything started to coalesce and get together, I was getting into it. And then it's hard to talk about a Guardians movie without talking about the music or the soundtrack. But once these iconic songs started pairing with these super emotional like moments, like, wow, it was like really hitting me. And I felt like when I left the theater, I felt very emotionally charged in a good way. So I would say if I had to review this movie just from like an emotional aspect, you know, a film I sat down to and it affected me, I feel like sometimes when you're going to a theater, that's all you're really looking for. You're right, to just feel changed for a moment. And I would say this movie definitely does that. There's a couple like character moments where I feel like some characters get a little bit of a short shrift, and sometimes I feel like we're not ultimately living up to the expectation of kind of wrapping up the Guardians, are kind of like following the thread for all of our characters. You know, this movie seems to focus definitely more on characters like Rocket or Peter, and then when they try their best to maybe wrap up some of the other members of the Guardians, it kind of feels a little short shrifted there at the end. But overall, I still had a great time with this movie. A lot of fun components. I mean, I think we'll talk a lot about the villain of this film, which was phenomenal. What an amazing performance. And I'm looking forward to see kind of what are the ramifications for this film going forward, because yes, we're kind of wrapping up this version of the Guardians, but we're also continuing maybe some of these other threads later on down the line. I'm excited to see where those go. So I would say overall 2 thumbs up. I'm glad this went over well, right? You know, I feel like it's been rough this current phase of the MCU, so it was kind of nice to kind of get back into this comfort zone of being with the Guardians again. And I'll throw it over to you, Chris.
So I have been sitting on this movie for about a week and a half now. Luxury of seeing it early, right? We talked about that last week. And it is very, very difficult to say which Guardians movie is my favorite, because they are all peak science fiction, story driven movies. And I would say, you know, this is, like you mentioned, you know, a movie is supposed to make you feel something, right? Like, you know, when I sit here and we talk about, you know, Ant-Man and the Wasp, didn't really make me feel anything, right? Kind of just meh. Black Panther, another movie recently that made us feel, right, from Marvel, right? Tells a good story. A lot of people forget about that one coming out recently. You go check that. But Guardians really has taken this journey of characters we've known for the past 8 years, right? 9 years. 9 years now, since 2014. And, you know, gives us, like everyone has said, an emotionally charged story that will make you feel feelings in ways you didn't think you would feel for regular characters and CGI characters that don't even exist, Mike. They're just pixels, which I think is a fantastic way that James Gunn has written this story and told these characters about. And what's a couple things I would say we'll talk about. If we're gonna break this movie down, to me it's what we talk about is we're gonna have to nitpick this movie, because I wouldn't say it's perfect. But by God, this is like one of the best movies I've seen in a very long time. Overall, even if you remove that it's Marvel, remove our hype levels, I still think it's a solid story from start to finish. And we'll talk about it in the spoilers, because I don't want to break anything. But what I really like about this movie in a couple ways is there is no long, overcomplicated intro to this movie, Mike. It really just catches us up real quick and then kicks off, and it doesn't stop for the entire time. There are some emotional moments, but there's some slow down moments, right? It just goes and goes and goes, and all the characters are firing on all cylinders, and it's really fun. I would also say, visually, one of the most visual, probably effects heavy films in a while, but it doesn't feel that bad. It doesn't feel like it feels good to watch this movie. It's a very beautiful film overall, and with talking about Ant-Man getting pushed back to finish Black Panther, and I don't know, the VFX artists fiasco we had at the end of last year, I don't feel that here. I feel like there was love and care and attention, and everything was checked out the whole way. So very visual. The action scenes, there's one we're going to talk about, Mike, that is just like perfection. It's probably one of the best long takes in a long time as well. We'll talk about that. I mean, I'm just coming off this, seeing it twice, feeling really, really good. And if James Gunn doesn't come back to Marvel, and if they never make a Guardians 4 or continue the Guardians with the Ravagers or the Annihilators, whatever they want to call them, and they just ended with this, I would be very happy knowing that this is a full trilogy, and how it ends is fun. They don't need to continue it, but this would be just a great little package, right, for the whole way through. And I would say, for those who may want to know, please watch the holiday special before you jump into this. There is a bit in there that we've covered before that they don't, because of the time jump between Guardians 2 and this being almost 10 years, they don't really talk about, they didn't cover it anywhere but the holiday special, right? Setting up some relationships between characters that they play off of. So overall, yeah, really, really great fun movie, and I think it's time to talk about spoilers, because I'm really hard to find the words without talking about specifics of this movie that are really good. So are you ready to jump into spoilers, Mike? Are you ready to
yeah let's do it. Let's jump in.
All right, we got time codes here for those who don't want to do it. So I don't know where to start on this movie in terms of spoilers.
I want to start with my favorite character that's always been in the Guardians movies, which is Rocket. So I would say this was a great film for me, because I've always found him the most interesting character, right? He's had this mysterious backstory for the longest time. And the trailers definitely hinted at that we were going to learn more about it. But I never realized how much of this movie was going to be specifically about Rocket, which is slightly a double-edged sword in a way of just I love seeing Bradley Cooper's Rocket on screen, just running around, being scrappy, being funny and quippy. And he's basically on death's door the whole movie. And when we get to see him before they ultimately save him, he's having the most traumatic flashbacks I've seen in a long time. And I'm not saying they weren't great and they weren't super entertaining, but I was just oh man, please save Rocket. I need to see him again being his scrappy self. I need to see him get revenge. I need to see him emotionally go through this trial and come out better on the other side. And I was just I think maybe this is a great place to bring up at the very beginning. Boy, did those trailers code that did you think somebody was going to die the whole
I would
time
say
watching this movie?
my biggest disappointment is that nobody died. I would say the status quo is different, but every member of the Guardians and the new ones made it out the other side pretty unscathed, if you will, even at that point.
I am kind of curious how much of that was intentional, or it just happened to be this was going to be a very emotionally charged movie, so no matter kind of how you cut the trailer, kind of looks like somebody's going to die.
Yeah.
Like even James Gunn has been sharing this on social media all weekend. Is the Peter Quill body double?
Yeah.
That is the thing that Nebula carries,
And it's like right at the beginning too, so it's not even like it's later. It's like he's passed out drunk and
and through the trailers we kind of thought like, oh no, like, and they're all walking in that kind of somber line. We're like, oh no, Peter, something's wrong. Is he dead? What's happening? It's like, no, he was just so hungover and drunk. He had to be carried, and it was like so funny because like that body, it's like a physical prop that's like apparently weighs like 30 pounds and pretty hilarious.
Yeah, well, and then contrast that to the end where he's out in space again, and he's like, they start to like bloat him up in space.
Oh my God,
and I was like,
Chris.
they're gonna kill him. Like they're gonna kill him.
That was such a bizarre moment because I was like, oh, they fucking deformed his face.
Yeah.
They must really want us to know that he's dead because they're not gonna do that. Like, how do you come back from that?
Yeah.
And then, I guess he's just kind of like frozen. Or
it's
whatever.
space. It's whatever. Yeah. He's also part celestial, all that fun stuff. But like nobody. For those curious, nobody dies in this from the Guardians team. However, there are, I would say, animal deaths in this, which, there are actual warnings now in theaters for this movie for, like, don't take your children. Like, because there are some very emotionally charged, like, animal cruelty scenes even. Like, that's what they're flagging them as. Like, it's not real animals. They are CGI animals. This is not a thing saying, oh my God, what they did is wrong. It's very sad. It's very tragic. Rocket's friends don't make it out, and like that's like some of the biggest gut punches in the film, right? Like pretty early on.
It was just it's just so intense, but also ultimately it ends up being like super cathartic, right? Once they finally save the day and then they start celebrating with that Florence and Machine music at the end, it's just like, wow, you do kind of feel like you went on this whole journey here and we've made it out to the other side. Everybody gets a happy ending. Thankfully, the High Evolutionary, they're kind of doing the classic thing of just like he's defeated, but you can't really ultimately say he's dead for the most part. And what an amazing performance!
So
from
Chwebuick, he did a great job in Peacemaker as well. I will say though, in all of James Gunn's movies, the villain is the least fleshed out. Like his motives, I don't understand why. Right? Like that, I wish there had been more of his story. Right? Like he's visited thousands of planets, and for some reason he chose Earth as the most perfect society. Like really, like this is what you're gonna build as another counter Earth. Like I wish I would have seen him on Earth. Right? Like taking it in and being amazed by it. Like he again. I'm glad this movie jumps in very quickly. Like it plays the acoustic version of "Creep" by Radiohead through its entirety, and then Adam Warlock just shows up and boom, rockets out, and like now they're on this journey, right, for the MacGuffin to save him and bring him back to life. Great, love that. But like the High Evolutionary I don't think got the introduction we really deserved for that, because he is so good. He just didn't have that time to do it.
Yeah, he really does kind of feel like he's in that same category as the Collector in a way of like, we're going to introduce you to this really quirky, weird type of character that is very flashy, but we're not really going to explain how he got there. But after kind of knowing the Collector and kind of understanding that there's this collection of kind of like dudes out there that have like "the" in front of their name and like the thing that they like to do. Yeah. Right.
The what
I kind of just
it's like getting a nickname. You're like, you're the chip and salsa guy. Yeah. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I feel like they probably have like a council somewhere where they meet every couple of years to have like a little symposium or something, and there's like the cooker, I don't know, the blaster, I don't know, just like random names of these weird people. Yeah. But he kind of slotted in that position pretty well of just like a quirky individual that has like this hyper drive, Yeah,
he's like hyper fixated on doing one thing, and because I think there's a very interesting scene later, the one where Rocket solves his problem, right, of how he's essentially doing the turtle's ooze, but very quickly, right?
They literally did it. They literally did it on a turtle first, and I was like, oh, they just made a mutant ninja turtle. Right?
Yeah. So they did that in the other animals, and Rocket solved it. But he was like, how did you solve it? How do I not? Like, I would want to know, like, what is his, again, the high evolution, what is his real insecurities? Like, yes, they come out there, but like, and we can pick it up pretty quickly, but like, why is he so insecure? Why is he doing this? Was really kind of just like said out loud rather than showed, and that's fine. It's like, I'm nitpicking. I'm really like digging into the cracks of the magnifying glass here, but I would have loved to just had a little bit more with him because he was so good in the role. Like,
I do like how, though, they are kind of putting the magnifying glass again on Earth, because like ultimately this is all culminating to something, right? And Earth is turning out to be like uniquely special in a way, which I think is important. Us as an audience needs to kind of empathize in some way with the plight of everything that's going on. And I like how Earth seems to be like this unique marble in this whole galaxy where there's all this life and teeming with it. You know, why is this one Earth special? And it seems to be we have this unique creative ability that, you know, gets us into a lot of trouble within our culture, right? But it does seem to make us unique, and things seem to blossom there that can affect the entire galaxy or universe, which I think is kind of fun. So this could be laying a little bit of the seeds for like when something like a Galactus comes around, right? You know, why would they particularly be persnickety with this one planet compared to, you know, anything else?
Well, it's got a celestial sticking out of the ocean, Mike. That's why. But also, you know, maybe an incursion later when two Earths have to fight and one wins, right? Having our stacked with defenders would come out in our favor. But you know, back to here. I think, you know, the high evolutionary, great, you know, again, performance. But I just wish I had just a hair more. I will say, I think, you know, when you talk about Guardians, you always talk about the soundtrack. I don't care for the songs as much in this one as the other ones, and I know that might be a hot take, and it's fine. It all comes down to music preference, right? Like what you liked and what you listen to. There are times when the music was actually kind of obnoxious in my face a little bit. The idea of what diegetic and non-diegetic music that's part of the movie versus music that's the soundtrack. A lot of this is great because some of the times, like, he's listening to music, right, when they're in those big the Pac-Man suits they look like when they're going to the Orgo Corp. You see him push a button and the music turns off, right? Like, oh, he's listening to music, or he puts the earbud in, so the background, like the Beastie Boys' No Sleep Till Brooklyn was playing in Star-Lord's ear while he was talking and stuff. So I think there's moments like that, but like some of it is like right in your fucking face, and I'm like, let's turn it down just a hair. Let's just turn the volume down. Let's not put music every, you know, scene change just because we can. I think that would be, again, I've always said, James, reel in the soundtrack choices. Great music, but like it doesn't need to be everywhere throughout the whole thing. Sometimes, and like that mix between is it in the movie or is it over the movie was always, you know, something I was keeping my eye on more than I probably should have.
I do have to say, maybe I don't know necessarily if I agree or disagree, but we could definitely say the last movie that we watched, the Mario movie, had probably some of the worst use of needle drops in a movie I've seen in a really long time. And I finally found that video that I was talking to Chris about a few weeks ago, where the "Take on Me" song is removed with the actual part of the soundtrack that was supposed to be
"Driving
there,
Me Bananas" is the name of the song, by the way.
And it just fits so perfectly. So it was just nice to hear somebody do it with a little bit more thought and intelligence.
Yeah, and it plays
there is a song
with it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a song that I really like on the soundtrack from the Mowglis, which is a song I've had in some of my playlists for years and years now.
San Francisco, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So I can pick it up very easily with just a couple of notes, and it only plays for a couple seconds in the movie when Gamora's learning how to fly that new ship when they're trying to escape Counter-Earth.
Yeah.
So like there's only like 2 shots that it plays in, and then it's gone. So I was a little disappointed because I wanted to hear more of that song. That song's awesome. But then the fact that it was in it so little, I was like, you probably didn't need a song in this particular part of the movie.
Well, there are 2 songs in this that really resonate with me. One is I love the song "In the Meantime" by Space Hog, and that's the one where they're actually jumping in those Pac-Man color suits out in. I'm like, I really love that song, and that scene was just, you know, obviously it's in space, so they're just floating around, so they don't need dialogue. So I think that was great. That was really important. And then again, Star-Lord turns his off by hitting the wrong button because blue was yellow, yellow was, you know, red was orange, you know, all that fun stuff. And at the end, obviously, where Rocket's asking the Guardians of the Galaxy what their favorite songs were, and he's like, I got a special one, and it's Redbone, Come and Get Your Love, which is from the first movie, obviously.
Yeah.
So that was a great throwback.
Yeah, great callback. My wife was particularly infatuated with the Flaming Lips song, Do You Realize? I'm trying to remember what scene that was.
That was whenever Drax is coming up to do the metaphor, because that one probably I think annoyed me the most because its use was very weird, because they're doing the ship from the first floor to the second floor outside of the ship, and Drax is coming up to talk to Peter, so he has to take his earbuds out to do it. It was just like, it was very loud, but like I understand it's not my song, so I get it. Like that was the scene it was used for when they're flying to Counter Earth, if you will. For that.
Gotcha. But we've brought up the OrgoCorp scene a couple of times, and I loved that part of the movie because it was such a unique and clever just visual aesthetic and design. It was like, okay, we want to sneak into like this facility. You know, the easiest thing to do, right, is you build some sort of like Death Star situation. You build some sort of like just like mechanical, hallways, corridors, just very spaceship futuristic, right? Like, no, we're gonna go the totally opposite direction. Everything's organic and fleshy, and it was so unique. It was so fun to look at, seeing like the sentries in those weird kind of like tardigrade looking suits was like,
and everything, you had to put your hand in yellow goo to do everything in the ship.
It was just so unique. It really makes that part of the movie like just visually stand out, right? When I'm thinking about the movie and the different set pieces that exist in it, I go like, oh yeah, you have like the OrgoCorp scene, and then after that we go to Counter Earth, and then after Counter Earth, like we're going inside of like the big spaceship that's escaped from it. So like you can really kind of see the different set pieces visually identified.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the OrgoCorp scenes is also where, again, part of my notes here, most of the cameos appear in this movie as well. You have literally Nathan Fillion finally becoming a face in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's been in every James Gunn movie, all three of them so far. So he actually becomes one of the OrgoCorp sentries and has a lot of dialogue where they talk about, he literally just like, I had this guy's an idiot, right? And he's like just fucking with him the whole time. Like his like, I guess, second in command or whatever was on the squad was pretty funny. And then we get James Gunn. It's his wife. I can't think of her name. She's in Peacemaker. She's doing the speaker thing, and then the girl Uda, who Peter tries to win over with I think that's Daniela Melchior, who played Ratcatcher in Suicide Squad.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so and then there's some more later, but there was a lot of cameos. There's a lot of action. I had some of the fun scenes where Mantis used her powers, like like you feel like dancing or like violent rage or kind of things like that. I thought it was really cool. I also really thought they were going to kill Drax in this scene because Dave Bautista was like, yeah, they're going to kill me off in this movie. Like, I want to die. They didn't kill him. They did not kill him whatsoever. He lied to us. But I thought they were going to kill him because he took like 3 of like those really, really hard blasts to the chest too. And this, I'm like,
yeah. Once he survived kind of that encounter, I was like, okay, he's not going out in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, because they kept him pretty much the comedic relief through the film, and I'm not saying that's a bad decision. I enjoyed it, but I was like, oh, once they're taking this angle, I know he's safe. Yeah. He's not going to die. I think really it was all eyes on kind of Rocket. Of just like, I know that they'll save him and he'll come back, for like a final fight, but will he survive that final fight?
And I honestly, once they brought him back, I was just fine. It was to me, it was Peter and Nebula, right? I think had the most like chances to be killed off. Because like at one point the ship, the cube is blowing up and Nebula's like piloting the ship, and I thought she was gonna sacrifice herself to keep the ship piloted, right? At one point there, but no, she made it out, and Peter froze himself in the thing. I forget where I was gonna go. OrgoCorp Counter Earth was interesting.
Well, I would say, like, just speaking of new things in general, probably the biggest new addition to this Guardians movie would be Adam Warlock. He's kind of like, he's like the newest character addition, which ends up sticking around at the end of the movie. He seems to be part of the Guardians now at the very end. Interesting take on the character, right? I would say where we last left off with the mystique of this character was like, oh, this is going to be kind of like a real, just kind of like maybe militant, like very just straightforward, like robot in a way, almost, of like you are like this perfect creature that is being made by perfect creatures, dripped in gold, right? And then we kind of end up getting this quirky, goofy kind of like teenage imbecile in a way, right?
Yeah, well, I think that was interesting. They did set up, like, I think it was fun to know that the golden people were made by the High Evolutionary. He's like, you're just a beautiful numbskulls is what he called them, really. And Adam was supposed to be, he's the only one with powers. He was the chosen one, but they took him out too early, and he's like, no, you're already flawed anyway, so none of this was going to work. But Adam, I think Will Poulter plays a pretty interesting Adam, right? Someone who's getting, I guess, learning emotions the first time through some of this movie. Even as he's like what, a B plot, I guess, overall. He'd be like a B plot to this. I still think he was fun at times, but I overall, if you were looking for an Adam Warlock movie, he's wasted, right, in this. But I think there's potentiality for him going out of Guardians 3 going forward with that. The other thing I would say, in terms of new characters, obviously the Lila, Teefs, and Floor, right? The three.
Oh God, the emotional heartstrings there ever was.
Christ.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, and like you knew what was going to happen too. If you've watched enough movies, if you've seen enough TV shows, you're just like, all right, the characters from his past that we've never seen before, they're all getting very, very buddy in these cages. There's a reason we haven't seen them, and Rocket's never brought them up before. Oh God.
Yeah. So I mean, they grow with it. Like, we get to see Rocket, kind of evolve or grow up in these cages with these, and obviously they're very creepy. Teefs reminds me of a transmetal rat trap from Beast Wars, if I'm going to be honest. He's a walrus with wheels. Lila is an otter with metal arms, and then Teefs is a rabbit who was turned into like a metal spider, really, at the end of it. And Lila was voiced by the actress who plays Hawkeye's wife, Linda Cardellini, by the way, for people who didn't know. The other two, I don't really know. But, just emotional heartbreak to have them all kind of gunned down in this, and Rocket make it out. But it was fun to see him literally tear up the dude's face at the end of that.
Very satisfying, because the high evolutionary comes off as this god. He literally says he is a god to these people, and he's so detached from just like humanity or life in a way that it doesn't matter. It's all extinguishable. He'll destroy anything that kind of gets in his way for his search for the perfect society. So it does make him pretty terrifying, right? Because you can't reason with somebody like that. You have to have something to offer, which I thought was an interesting way to kind of get the story going, right? I feel like with the Guardians movies, maybe more than anything else, is when the movies start, you don't really know what's going to be the spark that kind of ignites the specific journey out there, right?
Right.
So when it comes to this film, it's like, oh, Rocket, he's the secret, right? He has the brain power that he's never had before. But why does the High Evolutionary need him now, suddenly, out of nowhere? It's like, well, he's at his wit's end. He's tried to create all of these societies. He's thought he was close and never ends up working, so now he needs that brain.
And he also
did. I was like, okay.
Well, he also said he didn't know he was alive, kind of thing. So, like...
Oh, yeah, there was that one-off line of where
he's like,
the golden people, what are they called again?
Whatever, I don't remember what they're called.
I don't remember what they're called, but they just happen, I guess they happen to just mention it in the conversation.
Yeah, it's like, you didn't tell me. He's like, well, obviously, it's been 10 years since Guardians 2 in this world, right? Because there was a 5-year blip, and then Guardians 2 took place in 2014, so it's like, well, it's been 10 years, so it's whatever, but... Yeah, he literally takes out his own command center and his like own team because they're like, look, you're very hyper fixated on getting this specific character and his brain, really. So it's, we got to focus on this. I did like some of the weird creatures he created, like the other animals. Like there was the pig, war pig, the half pig robots. Like the army creatures were very much grotesque looking in like how they were.
I would say I would agree in a sense of I liked visually how they looked. They were creepy, they were odd looking. It was just this mashup of like machine and animal, and it was super creepy. I mean, the war pig had like red eyes and like, I don't know, like I feel like maybe I remember seeing a chainsaw, but maybe there wasn't a chainsaw. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just attributing that to it.
It's like mix a mech warrior with an animal of your picking, and that's what they look like.
But to me personally, they did feel a little out of place to me. Like I felt like these were kind of characters maybe ripped from another movie and put in here. I don't know. I guess I just kind of thought of the High Evolutionary as maybe somebody that would have maybe slightly more finesse with like creatures that are kind of his like emissaries, like his battle, his first line of defense. I thought they maybe would be a little bit more polished than like a pig thrown in a blender with like some erector set. But they still looked cool. I wish I got more of the Orgo Corp. Like just kind of like cool visual design out of it. But honestly, like you were saying, it's just like a nitpick.
Right? Yeah. To me, I think they're fun because you need that grotesque. Like you don't want to root for something that's visually appealing or root against something that's visually appealing, right? So like, I see why they went with the grotesque. And there's like the one creature who's like I want to say it was like man bear pig because he was like an octopus and a bear and something else. All these half machine, half animals. So yeah, no origin for them, but they're pretty disgusting to look at. We get a return. I'm going to talk about some cool abilities. Like they really amped up. Rocket and Nebula were the only two surviving members of this team through the blip, if you remember correctly. And they had some, I really like Nebula's new arm that like does everything, like has a blaster, suction cup, everything. I'm like, oh, she's got a really cool arm. It's got that nice nanotech look to it. Thought that was cool. But Groot hiding the guns in his body and then whipping them out to like do a showdown with everybody, that was pretty cool. Like Groot really he had a kaiju moment, right? He's like, go full kaiju, and then he grew big. He could become a head with his little tentacles and walk around. Like they really beefed up Groot quite a bit in this movie, several ways too.
And it was really cool also to see Groot at the very end of the movie in the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
To see like, oh, what does Groot grow into if you kind of give him time, right? If he doesn't get like decimated by some sort of huge attack and regrow himself. So that was a really cool look.
And that design is King Groot from the comic books, the original Groot design. So they lean into that a little bit. So that was fun. And then, he had wings at one point. He was able to use his wings. Like Groot really came into his own there. Not rather than just using tree tentacles, he was doing a lot more overall. He like when he was doing that scene with Peter where they had all the guns and he had like 10 guns, he was creating branches, shields around Peter. I don't know if you saw that were taking blasts. So I think that was really cool to see that for Groot.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're on Groot now, should we go to his kind of like his big moment into the film?
Big moment, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it means. So go ahead and tell him what we got.
Yeah, we finally see Groot at the end around all of his friends just before they kind of finally split off and go their own ways, where we finally get to hear Vin Diesel say something else. Yeah. Where he says, what is it, just I love you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And notice nobody acts surprised at that in there. So James Gunn has said that the idea of this is that now at the end of the trilogy we understand Groot, because Gamora was like she didn't understand him until the end, and then she understood. So like the idea is like now we understand Groot, after growing with him for these movies. So I think that's a fun little addition, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't say anything at the end credits either, which I thought was a good way to not like confirm or deny it either way if they wanted to. But like the big Groot was pretty hella cool looking, because I was like, where is Groot in this scene? And he's the rock they're all sitting on. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, right? If we get to see more of the Guardians in the future, which, we can talk about the next post-credit scene as well, right? Yep. Is Groot finally going to be fully voiced, right? Or maybe they'll do something like, clever where, if Groot's in a scene with a character that doesn't know him very well, he'll say, I am Groot. But, if you're in a scene with him and characters, you get to hear, like, Vin Diesel actually speak a line, which would be pretty interesting.
Absolutely. But, yeah, they could go either way with that. I'd be happy, right? The subtitles that we see, but no, like the person doesn't understand if they don't know who he is.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe I could use this moment, because we're going to talk about maybe the second post-credit scene, where I have to say, if I really had to ding this movie critically, something like far beyond a nitpick, it would just be like we're trying to wrap up a lot of story arcs with a lot of different characters and introduce other new characters. And I feel like the only one that really feels fully formed to me is Rocket, right? We finally get to see him deal with his past, go through this emotional journey, have the closure of just deciding he is a guardian of the galaxy. He's not going to be somebody that just kills somebody in cold blood. He saves all of these animals, which was incredible. Like the most emotional moment to me when he said we have to like I don't remember exactly what he says, but it's like
we have to save them all
too. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's the moment that got me.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other emotional parts in this movie that I'm sure was making people cry, but like that moment where he was at that feeling of just vulnerability, and also he had to kind of like, how am I also going to convince my friends that these people mean that these animals mean something as well? So that was the moment for me that was super emotional. So Rocket's whole arc, I think, is just perfect, right? And he's not even in the whole movie for the most part. You know, he's comatose and doing flashbacks, but
in his story, if you look at all three movies, he was about being a loner, being a rebel, right? With Groot, albeit, but like, hey, I'm doing things for me, not anybody else. Like, you know, there's a big scene where they get drunk and fight in the first one about it, right? He's like, whenever this is all over, I'm leaving on my own. And now he is the captain. He is the leader that everyone's looking up to hold that family together. So, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I would say kind of like Peter's emotional arc and then Mantis as well. Really, you kind of gotta look for it, right? And you kind of gotta explain it to yourself in a way that kind of makes it feel better than what you ended up getting, right? Because Peter starts, I would say, from a pretty vulnerable perspective of just like the love of his life has died, and he can't even get over it because she's still there and doesn't even remember him, right? It's almost just like flashing the memory of like somebody that you loved, and he still has to put up with it. He keeps coming across her in the galaxy, right? That's really, really rough. But then it also kind of gets derailed, and they try to pivot him towards like, oh, he never got closure with his grandpa. So actually, no, that's actually the direction we want to take him at the end of the movie. And then I think probably the biggest sin is at the very, very end where Mantis gets like a short little like monologue of just, oh, I've never got to experience life on my own. I'm not saying I disagree with her, but like, oh, all of a sudden now Mantis has to go through an emotional journey when she's never really brought it up before. She has to go off on her own. It just kind of felt like, we just need to get her out of the Guardians some way so we can get this new configuration.
I think by you saying that she had an emotional journey, she had no emotional journey. She's left. I think it's fine to say I want to go on a journey is fine. I disagree saying they didn't put her through anything. She's like, I want to go. Like, I want to go do something else. And that's fine. Because that's the one thing, you know, related to Guardians Holiday Special they brought up is like, again, Peter and Mantis are brother and sister, you know, right? Like, you know, they had to show the father, but like, but
almost would have expected Mantis like to follow Peter, or at least maybe secretly, right? She could have like kind of been like following his trail to keep him safe or something.
Well, I don't think so. I think put her out because, you know, again, this is, no one else should know this, and it shouldn't be relevant here. In the comic books, Mantis is the cosmic, they call it like the cosmic Madonna, really, if you will. Like, she has the ability, like, there's some future event where she is going to be relevant to this, and I think in her state from James Gunn's that Mantis, she is, again, comedic relief, right? She has nothing else other than being a comedic foil with Drax. Like, her and Drax are like not really serious members. Like, they get on the bike and ride off, and Drax doesn't like you know, on Counter Earth. I'm like, why did you do this? Like, you're both idiots. Like, this is you're not really contributing to the team by doing things your own way at the end of the day. So I think by taking her out, they can, like, maybe she comes back and she is more, you know, like, aware of what she can do rather than relying on like, hey, I'm just going to argue with Drax and everybody about this because, you know, she's essentially a full-grown child in the James Gunn versions. Now, I would say on the other end, you know, I understand Peter saying, but at the end of this movie, even if they don't completely wrap up Star-Lord, he is the only one who gets the text at the end of this, right? There is no, the Guardians of the Galaxy will return. That is not said. It's Peter Quill, the legendary Star-Lord, will return. So I'm like, what is next for him? Like, that is my question. Like, is it going to be a Star-Lord solo movie next that we get?
It seems like a Disney Plus series to me, honestly, of him on Earth, kind of doing the fish out of water thing, like readjusting to humanity. I don't know what the overall goal of the story is. Like, do we make it just kind of more slapsticky? Because, like, what big, you know, villain is going to come across his Disney Plus series? I don't really know. I'm kind of interested. I was kind of digging the vibe a little bit. It was kind of an awkward post-credit scene because we were just kind of getting like a snippet of him eating cereal with his grandpa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am kind of curious. Like, yeah, why isn't that 45-year-old man mowing his own lawn and Peter has to go do it? So I was intrigued. I thought it was kind of silly and funny in a way.
I could even say, even if they don't do a Disney Plus series, I don't think that's warranted for character one-offs. I think even if they did a movie, there's like you mentioned at the start of the show, there's something to be said done with him on Earth, right? Like, he has never been around Earth society. He hasn't been around it since he was 8 years old, right?
I guess
so him adjustment, but he is also very powerful and very well versed in fighting and stuff for being just a normal person. I
guess it could also be a special feature presentation, right? They seem to be kind of leaving those to define like a new character introductions, but they could reinvent it and go in a different way with just like a one-off of Peter, because Chris Pratt is a pretty high commodity now out there in Hollywood. So could you get him strapped down for a Disney Plus series? Well, maybe, because sometimes they're only like 6 episodes, so he might be able to film it all in the time span of like a short film or something like that. But Zoe Saldana has been out there saying that she won't be returning to the role of Gamora.
I don't believe a single one of these actors, but go on.
Yeah, actors always say you can't even trust them when they say they're going to retire, right? Yeah. So, but I felt like her character was an interesting send-off, right? Because really, the ultimate send-off of Gamora was her tragic death by the hands of her father, right? That was really her death. This Gamora is just this alternate version that was more of something that Peter had to learn to let go to maybe finally wrap up his grief in a way. So seeing her in the movie kind of around the Ravengers, and actually they were her family, right? We just didn't get to see that kind of side of it. I was okay with that.
Yeah, I think so. So I think she played the character very differently, right? More like Guardians 1 early Gamora, who was more, I wouldn't say mean, but just like, look, I don't want to do any of this stuff. So I did appreciate the actual, like, hey, we didn't try to catch up Gamora and make her the same one at the end of this movie as we saw last time. So that I agree that was a great thing. Nebula and Drax, really, I think Drax embracing becoming a dad again was interesting, right? That's a good story arc for him at the end of this, not just being muscle and fighting. Like, when we met him versus that now, really good. It was great that he could understand the kids for that. And Nebula, like, becoming literally one of the world's, or I guess galaxy's assassins, and becoming like the leader of nowhere, which also got a really cool moment when its eye became a gun. Once it came out of the warp pipe, and they were like, well, we're just going to shoot you with the eye here. I thought that was a really, really fun moment. So these characters none of these characters I think are written out completely, right? But they could you don't definitely have to, I would say, reference them again if you didn't want to, or like you could one line it, like, oh, Gamora, she's still out with the Ravagers somewhere. Yeah. Something.
Well, also we know that we're approaching a larger kind of Secret Wars battle planet, something going forward, and there's no way the Guardians aren't invited to the party in some aspect, right? I could see some of the Guardians not being there, but it's hard to believe that we might get a little bit of Peter and some sort of series or special presentation, and then that's it. Like I would say, and that comes back around to like we get some emotional wrap up of some characters, but it really does not feel like we've done like a finale of a trilogy. It just kind of feels like we're more of like closing a chapter more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly, right? Nobody died. Everyone, the status quo was changed, and everyone's in a different place, but like nothing is definitive, right? Like, they all didn't this isn't the end of Rogue One, right, where everyone sacrificed themselves to get this data to A New Hope and start another set of characters. Like, this is like, hey, we've moved the chess pieces around the board, now the next players get to come in and move them, because I don't think James Gunn will come back to Marvel, if I'm going to be honest. I think if he does, it might be 10 years maybe, like we said earlier. Like, it's not going to be until he removes himself from DC, because he's either done well or it did not do well. One of the two.
I mean, Kevin Feige's been running Marvel for 15 plus years now, something like that. So if things go well for Peter and Gunn, they could be there just as long. Yeah. I would say, talking about DC though, one thing that I've seen people out there worried about when it comes to Gunn is he going to be able to tackle something more stoic and regal like a Superman movie, right? And I feel like this movie proves more than anything that he knows how to hit those emotional beats.
Yeah.
You know, we do have the emotional loss of Yondu in the second film, right? And, you know, a little bit of Peter losing his mom in the first film, but man, he really cranks it up in this third one. And like, I feel like Gunn is doing a lot better job than Taika is of showing that he has range and the ability to tell different types of stories, maybe in a slightly different angle, where Taika seems to be just really leaning into the comedy the more and more you get into him. You go further back, you can find some more emotionally relevant things in his career. But sometimes I feel like maybe the paths cross.
Well, I think it's also different. Is, you know, Gunn has, again, like we said, did all three movies, right? The Spider-Man trilogy for Marvel was really good, right? Very emotional stuff on the end of it as well, with No Way Home. Like, absolutely. I think, and Ant-Man not so much, but, you know, those are three tonally different films. Like, the first two versus the third, very weird movies. But I think, you know, if you let someone have their voice and their way and work through these movies, you're going to get something, you know, from start to finish, you're going to get something good. But I don't blame Taika for him for picking up Thor and having to save Thor from Thor 2, right? Like, I'm like, I don't blame you for that. And Thor 4 is like you're trying to figure out where to go in this wonky world. But I will say, let's go back, if we can, the end of this. So if there is a Guardians of the Galaxy 4, or whatever they want to call it, right? The next, maybe, you know, Annihilators. They have a bunch of different names in the comic books. The team of Rocket and Groot now sees the additions of Adam Warlock. Kraglin was there. He's learned how to use his whistle arrow. Cosmo is there because Cosmo is a psychic dog who is awesome. It was a good dog, by the way, Mike, whether you think that or not. Then we get the introduction of Phyla now, which is one of the girls that they saved from the ship. Now, do you know why this character is very important and on the team all of a sudden?
I don't know why, and I knew that you would tell me.
Yes.
So that's why I waited until today to look into it.
So that character in the comic books is called Phyla Vell. Phyla Vell is the daughter of Genus Vell, who was the original Captain Marvel in the comic books. So she is a daughter of comic book Captain Marvel and becomes Captain Marvel. So she actually has the ability to, you know, use energy and blast and stuff like that. Now, obviously, the comic books and the movies are way different, right? They've set themselves up very, very different. But like by taking this character forward, they're able to use, I wouldn't say Captain Marvel, but, you know, Phyla Vell going forward as an extra powered person in this world, if you will. And she has worked with the Guardians and other people as well in the comic books. So there's a storyline called Annihilation in the comic books. It's a cosmic story where Annihilus, the king of the negative zone, creates what's called an annihilation wave and like takes over the cosmic, you know, where it just like ravages it with this army of like bug-like creatures. And if they go that route going forward, I would be very, very thrilled. But if they need an extra powered person on the Guardians who's just doing stuff in the background, they now have one, right? Kind of thing. So, it was very interesting to see a quote unquote Phyla Vell reveal very early in this movie. It just being like one of the girls from the high evolutionaries' new race of people kind of going forward. So very, very interesting. We're coming up like on an hour here, but we're coming up on an hour of this review. I just think, you know, it's interesting because you can't just review this movie, right? You have to review the whole Guardians arcs of everything. And at the end of the day, you know, seeing this movie twice and really getting the second time, Mike, I would say it's just as emotional, just as effective as the first time. And that is an awesome feeling, right? So if anyone has any hesitations about seeing this the second time, I would say go for it. Like literally, like if you want to do it because you are going to get the same emotional beats just as much. When I saw it on Thursday night, there were literally people sobbing and bawling in the theater. Like, as I said earlier, like around the parts where like you know, the animals were dying, and like, you know, it's just very emotional very early on. Like Rocket's first word is the word hurts, and you're like, God damn, right in the fucking feels, man. Like you're like, oh my god, like this character, really? You're gonna do this to us? Okay, then let's buckle up. So overall I think this is just a great movie, and I can't wait to bring it home, and I'm not gonna buy the Guardians of the Galaxy like box set of all 3 movies and special editions. I will be looking forward to revisiting these characters in this trilogy plus. That's what I'll call it, trilogy plus, overtime, if you will. Right? I think it's really done a really, really good job overall. We didn't talk about it. That fight scene in the hallway to No Sleep Till Brooklyn, the long shot.
Oh, that was great.
I mean, that was a fantastic song. A lot of brutal action in there. Really cool to see that. I think there was another movie. We'll talk about it. I've seen it before, but I watched it again today. That had a really long shot. That was cool. So I love the addition of these action-filled long shots in movies these days, Mike. I think it's really cool.
And I feel like it worked really well because the Guardians were finally reunited, ready to go at it. They were all unified, and this was kind of Rocket's first like unofficial kind of maneuver as captain of Guardians of the Galaxy.
He was
the
back
one leading the line.
Yeah.
And there's like great kind of just like slow-mo snapshot of him like flying through the air with his like blasters. It was great.
And he's laughing because he's having such a good time like doing all this stuff. Every character got a highlight, right? Everyone got a little bit of action scenes. And it's probably the best hallway fight scene in Marvel. Daredevil, you can take that to the bank. This is better than any Daredevil hallway fight scene you had. So absolutely great time, Mike. I just loved it so much. I'm glad we get to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't really have any sort of official rankings or orders when it comes to Marvel movies. I feel like the best that I can do is kind of put them either in a top, mid, or lower tier, and this one definitely lands in top tier for me, right? I think it deserves its place up there with some of the other great Marvel films, and it's very emotionally affecting, which you don't always get with a lot of Marvel stuff. But great time, awesome. Looking forward to going forward with the next Marvel tidbit, which would be Captain with the
Marvels in November. Yeah, will be it. Secret Invasion, if you will, this summer, and then Loki sometime, and then the Marvels. I would also say, we're going to see this is part of our weekly news, and you guys should always come back and hopefully you're subscribed and listen to our weekly news episode. We are going to see a slowdown in Marvel releases because Bob Iger is back at the helm, right? Like he wants quality over quantity. So hopefully we have some slowed down stuff, but maybe by San Diego we'll get an announcement about a follow-up here, whether it's, you mentioned a Disney Plus show, a special presentation, or even a Star-Lord movie, if you will, or Annihilators movie. So we'll let you guys know. Check back every week. We'll do that. But if people want to know what you're doing, what you're up to, Mike, where can they get you at?
Well, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you could read my brand new webcomic series, Life Rewards Risk, at Life Rewards Risk or liferewardsrisk.com. Chris, people want to check you out. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Valdan87. You can message me on Twitter, but I'm not using Twitter as much because that place is a cesspool, if you will. Also, any video game things, it's Valdan, one of the two. But every week we're here doing the show, and if people want to listen to our show every week, where can they find that information at?
Oh, all you got to do is head on over to superheroslate.com. That's the best place to find our hidden file at OrgoCorp. Superheroslate.com. You can get us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to fine podcasts. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can get merch at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. We love it when you reach out. Let us know what you thought about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And if you want to be a super fan of the show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend and share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.